Welcome to the fourth webinar on this series of 6 Express 30 minutes webinars on Phoenix WinNonlin, brought to you by Certara University. My name is Anna Henry, and I'm the Director of Training at Certara University. Today, I will be presenting to you tips and tricks on how to customize some Phoenix tables. I will be using version 8.1 of Phoenix WinNonlin, although the functionality that I will be presenting is available in most versions of Phoenix WinNonlin. As a reminder, all attendees are muted, but if you have difficulties hearing or have questions, please type them in the Q&A panel. There will be questions and answers at the end of the presentation, where I will try to address as many questions as possible, or otherwise they will be addressed in writing when the recording and the projects presented here are shared with you. To access the Q&A panel, you can use the icons at the bottom of the WebEx presentation. Okay, with that, let's get started. As always, the objective of these Express webinars is to provide you some tips so you can become more effective with your Phoenix daily work. So today, I'm going to be talking first about some common pharmacokinetic tabulations, some tables that you may want to create. In particular, we will discuss one type of table that summarizes parameters, as well as another table that summarizes concentrations. We will then talk about Phoenix workflows and workflow templates. And also, I would touch on pre-programmed custom tables that are available within Phoenix WinNonlin. Just to remind you that the table module is within its own category, table, and the name of the object is also table. I'm assuming that everybody is familiar with the table module in Phoenix and that you are here to learn some tips on how to make use of it more effectively. What we're going to talk about today is how to create tables like this one. This example is a demographics table that is suggested in an FDA technical specification document for bioequivalence. It's called the Data Summary Tables, and it was published in 2017. The link of this is at the bottom, where you can see the types of tables that are suggested in that document. And in these kind of tables, you can see that you may want to present mean plus minus the standard deviation in a single cell. Or you may want to present a range, like you see here for age, so like the min and the max. You may also want to present a number and then a proportion in a percentage, like they present here for gender, for males and females. Or maybe you're interested in presenting a pharmacokinetic parameter table like this one. This is one of the ones that we're going to be talking about today. So in here, you can see that, for example, parameters like Cmax, AUC, and AUC last and AUC infinity, you have a mean plus minus standard deviation and a CV% in parentheses, all in one cell. And for Tmax, you have a median and a min and the max. So it's kind of a mixture of presentation in the table depending on the parameter. So this is one of the tables that we're going to be discussing today. And maybe you want a similar format when you present nominal time, the concentration per nominal time. But in this case, the one that I'm presenting in red, instead of having that presentation, maybe you want to have something like less than the LLOQ presented in this table. So this is one that I will talk about too. Okay, so in this demonstration, what I'm going to do is first, I want to run very quickly to where you want to be. So I'm going to show you in an ideal situation, you get a data set, you run a template, and you get these tables that you want. And then we're going to dig in deeper on how did I create those templates to generate these custom tables. It will require a couple of steps that cover descriptive statistics as well as data tools. And then we'll talk about workflow templates and saving and reusing those templates. Okay, so I'm going to switch now to Phoenix. Okay, Cheryl, can you see my Phoenix?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I have two projects open here. The first one is a bioequivalence example. This is a 2-period crossover bioequivalence. And you can see that each subject got treatment of capsule as well as tablet. We have a sequence period, nominal time, the actual time, and the concentration. If I scroll down a little bit lower, you will see that the same subject 2 also got tablet. Okay? So it's a 2-period crossover. And in an ideal situation, what you want to do is after you've created an NCA, I will not be covering the non-compartmental module today, but we will assume that you've already run the NCA and you have this output, which is the final parameters pivoted, where you have all the PK parameters calculated. So what you may want to do is just go ahead and do a tabulation of these parameters. I can go to workflow, I can load a workflow template, I can find the template that I'm interested in. So for example, I have one here that I'm going to select. It imports this template. It indicates to me that the user needs to do something. So I highlight in this data link, and it indicates I need to map the final parameters pivoted from NCA. So I can just drag my NCA, select the final parameters pivoted worksheet. It already maps it because it's an NCA, a regular NCA output, so therefore this is already set up with the default name, okay? I go back to the template and I run it. So I'm not explaining to you how this is created yet. I'm just showing you the ideal situation where you want to be, okay? So this is kind of like the end product. You run it, one click, you go to table, and you see now that this table has been created. It already has everything within the cell. It's formatted correctly. It has units. You're happy with it. Notice that it also has, in this case, a reported object. So if I go to the report and I view it as an external document, in this case Word, I now have this table already in a Word report. Okay, so this is where we want to be. We also want to make sure that these templates work for all the data. So I may have a different data set. So maybe a fed-fasted example here. It's set up similarly that we have nominal time, actual time, treatment and concentration. The names are a little bit different, and it's a fed-fasted. So in this case, it would be similarly, you have an NCA created, you go to workflow, and then you can do, you can upload that template. Let me do a different template for this one. Let's upload a template that has the concentration that we tabulate. Okay, so in this case, we're not going to be tabulating the PK parameters, just the original concentrations. So note that the user sets map the input concentration. So I would just take that data set, map it here, and make sure that things are correct. Notice that the nominal time in this case is not being picked up right. So I will do it myself, that nominal time maps to nominal time, actual time maps to time, and then everything else is mapped correctly. Once you've done the mapping, you can run a template, and you get that table. All right, so this is just to give you a flavor of what we're going to be talking about today, right? And notice that I've been able to change these to negative, to less than the lower limit of quantitation. All right, so this just, I will now close all these projects. I will not save them, and we will start again going through all the steps, okay? So let me load a project. This has the same data as the bioequivalence data that I started with. You can see this is the two-period crossover bioequivalence that we talked about, and it also has another data set that has some demographics, okay? An NCA has been created already. And the first thing that I want to show you is just the table module by itself. If you want to tabulate data, you can just take some results, for example, from NCA, this final parameters pivoted, and you can send it to a table module. The table module can do several things. It has a way that you can select what columns you want, what stratifications you want, what variables you want. Okay, so for very quickly, I can say, well, I want maybe subject to be my row ID, so it would go down, treatment to be my column stratification, so it would go across, and I can pick a couple of parameters. So let's just pick Tmax and Cmax for this example and just run that. Okay, so you get a small table. It might look good to you. You can go on the bottom to statistics and select to do maybe the N, mean, standard deviation, and a CV%. And we do this by column. So I run it, and now you can see that you have the statistics on the bottom. If that's what you want, you can stop here. But the tables that I was showing you were a little bit different than those. So what I want to point out here is that in each cell, you can only have one value if you use it in this manner. So in order to be able to present more than one value in a cell, we need to trick the system on doing that. And that's what I'm going to be showing you today. Okay? But before we go there, I want to talk about this tab in this table. This is called Custom Tables. So if you click on Custom Tables, you may have some tables there. This one, the bioequivalence demographic, ships with the Phoenix installation, so all of you should have it. I don't believe that the other one ships anymore with it, but if you select a table like this, okay, and you go back to setup, you will see that it's asking for some data, and this is all in orange. You need to have all that data exactly. Doesn't need to be called the same, but it needs to have that information in order for this table to run. So in this example, I actually have that, so I can drag the data set there. It would map it, and you run it, and very nicely, you get this demographics table, the one that we talked about in, at the beginning, which is in one of the FDA documents, okay? But again, this is something that requires this data to be set up in a specific way, and it's pre-programmed. What it is an XSLT file. It's an extensible style sheet language transformation file. And this has been pre-programmed for this purpose only. So what I'm trying to say is that if you want a table, any table, and you are pretty standardized in the way that you get your data, and you know you're going to get that data, you can get a programmer to create an XSLT table for you. And then you will be able to just pick it from here, do all the mapping, and get your results. Okay? So let's go back for a minute to the presentation here. And let's just review these. So for custom tables that are within the application with that tab, you need to define this extensible style sheet language transformation file. And those need to be added to something called the custom tables XML file. To do that is so they show up in the drop-down menu from Phoenix. And then by default, the files need to be put in this custom tables location. This is the location where they should be located at, and I will show you those so you can see I have them there. And then whatever this custom table requires, those set of tables need to be in the output in order to create the table correctly. All right, so let me show you where this is. So for example, in my case, this is located here in the program file Certara Phoenix application plugins table custom, which is the default. And you will see that I have this one with extension XSLT and also this custom tables XML. And if you open the XML, you will see that it calls this table, and therefore it shows up in the dropdown. Okay. I have another one in here that was also created, so I could use that if I'm familiar with the input that it needs. Okay. If you have any questions about these, please type them in the Q&A, and I can address them later on. But let's move on with the demo. Okay, what I'm going to work now with you is some of the steps that template that I showed you at the beginning is doing. So let's just start with a PK parameter table that has been created. Just let me remind you that our goal here is to create this table, okay, with the NCA parameters and then some of the summaries here within a cell to have all this information. So to start with, we need to do a descriptive statistics. So we use the final parameter pivoted input. We select the summary statistics that we want. In this case, we sort by treatment, and then we select some summaries, some parameters that we want to summarize. Notice that I'm using version 8, so I am able to pick some of the statistics that I want in the output. In other versions, you're just going to get everything. So you do not need to select them. You're just going to get the whole output of all the statistics, the summary statistics. So it can work with previous versions too. Okay. So now here in the output, I can go ahead and scroll to the right, and you can see that I have for each variable, each treatment, I have, for example, a mean and standard deviation. Okay, so that's the first step. And then you're going to do one next step, which is kind of the tip here. And this is what I'm going to be showing you, and hopefully you will understand it, that there is something called a transformation that is called custom that would allow us to create those cells the way that we have seen. So I'm going to go slowly through these, and I have 3 steps here. Let me move this up a little. You will see that the action of transformation, you can pick a custom transformation. This is very, very powerful. And in this custom function, you can use any of these function lists that are on the right-hand side. And all this is documented, so if you're not familiar with them, you can just look at this table and also look in the guide that Phoenix provides, okay? So I'm using a concatenate function here. So I want to talk about those a little bit. So let's concentrate on that. Okay, so there's going to be 3 functions that I'm going to be talking about. And I think those are very important. So there's some of the 3 most important for me. And one is concatenate, which combines 2 or more strings into 1 string. The other one is an if statement. So this is similar to Excel. So it says if something, a conditional argument, then do that, else do something else, okay? And it supports things like the and or the or, which is like a little just vertical line, and also supports nested if. So I'll have an example so we can walk through that. So concatenate if and round 6 is another function. This one, the round 6, runs to the number of significant digits that you want. So if you put something like round 6, 10.318, comma 3, this is saying to round this number to 3 significant digits, so therefore it would be 10.3. Okay, so let's go through one example. You may have data with column A, column B, with one row that says a column A black, column B white, and then the opposite for the second row. If you write concatenate column A, and then comma, and in hyphens the symbol and, then comma B, what this would translate to, once in this new column C, is black and white. So it has concatenate both with the and symbol in the middle, and the same with the second column, the second row, sorry. Now let's talk about an if statement. If I want to create a new column D and I say, if column A is equal to white, then set it to flag 1. If not, keep the value of column A. So how would this look like? Column D then would look here and say column A is equal to black. So this is not true, so I jump here and I keep the value of column A, which is black. Or in the second row, if column A is equal to white, yes, this is true, then I set it to flag 1. Okay? And as I mentioned, you can have embedded ifs, so within one of those, you can put an if with it. And that can be very powerful for data manipulation. So all of these is within the data wizard, and it can be used with a custom data transformation. Some of the statements that I'm going to be showing you today use these. Use concatenate the mean, which is rounded to 3 significant digits. Then you concatenate it with the plus minus symbol, and then concatenate it with the standard deviation, also rounded to 3 significant digits, comma, and then also add in parentheses and the CV% concatenated to 3 significant digits. And we use the same type of statements with the mean and the median, min, and max, but in this case, we're going to put a dash in between instead of the symbol plus minus. So this is kind of the tip for today. Using these data wizards and custom transformations to be able to present the data in a different way. The if statement that I'm going to be using is going to look like this. So if mean is equal to 0, or remember this is the or symbol, or the mean is equal to an expression like this, NaN, it stands for not a number. I don't really like that. So if it's equal to something like this, then I would like to present the data as less than LLOQ. Otherwise, leave it to this mean underscore, and the mean underscore is an expression that we have concatenated. Okay, so I hope this is clear, and I'll show you the Phoenix project here. Okay, so these are the statements that I'm doing. For the first one, I concatenate the mean, the standard deviation, and CV%. So if I go to the result and I look at the first step, you will see that it creates this new column, okay, where I have the mean plus minus the standard deviation and the CV%. The second step, it's a concatenation of the median, min, and max, all rounded to 3 significant digits. So if I go to result and show you the second step, you will now see that I have 2 columns now, this mean SDCB and this median underscore min max. But I've done this for each row, okay? And what I really wanted is kind of a combination of, for some parameters, for these AUCs and Cmax, I want the mean plus minus the standard deviation, and for Tmax, I want the median and range. I accomplished this on the first step with an if statement. So it just says if variable is equal to Tmax in this case, then make it median underscore, which I have mapped to be this median underscore min and max. There's the mapping here. And otherwise, if it's not Tmax, just map it to the mean underscore, which is this concatenation there. The results from that, and let me freeze this so you can see the parameters they correspond to. I now have 3 columns here at the end where the top result is this mean plus standard deviation and CVs for the AUCs and Cmax, and for Tmax is now the median, min, and max. You can go ahead and then just use a table module to tabulate these columns, and it would give you the presentation that you want. I, however, have done a pivot of the worksheets in order to keep the units in the headers. So if you use the data wizard results, you can put the units as another row, but they look kind of separated in the table. So I just pivoted the table. I just did the variable as my column header. The row header is the treatment, and then the values is these last tab results. These results in a table like this that has the units of the parameters right under the variable in the header. By then using a table, I can just select to present the row ID treatment and all these data here from the pivoted. Okay, it results in that. Now, I have done some nice things here. So in order, for example, I'll just show you a couple of things that tables can do. I have made this nice. So every time that you find Tmax, for example, is now a small t subscript max. Cmax is an upper C with subscript max. If you find a U, I made it a Greek mu. So I just use this column title, search and replace, to do those type of replacements. Okay, and then I put some footnotes, etc. So I hope this makes sense. It's very similar to use concentration for the concentration tabulation. I've also used descriptive statistics, a data wizard with concatenates and if statements to create this type of table. Okay, let me just show you very quickly this if statement here. It's the one that I showed in the presentation, just as if the mean is 0 or is equal to this expression, then present it as less than LLOQ. All right, so it's the same tip, using concatenate and using if in a data wizard to then do the table. All right, and I'm just quickly going to show you now how to create a template from this so you can reuse it. Let's work with the parameter one. One thing that is nice is that in this case, the data, the source data only maps one to one thing, and then it does a cascade of things. Now, it is possible that you create something a little bit more difficult where maybe you have 2 sources. It's a good idea to always put what we call a data link And to do this, you highlight the workflow, and you can right-click and select Connect External Sources to Data Links. This includes this data link step, okay? And the nice thing about this is that when you reuse the template, you only need to map the data once instead of mapping it to every object. And in this data link, the first thing that I like to do is move it up because I think it's the first step, and then I like to rename it. So I always put user if I think that the user needs to do something, and in this case, it needs to map the data. And then be clear about what they need to map. So maybe we'll even put NCA, okay? Final parameters pivoted. You can just rerun it so it's all refreshed. Once you're done with this workflow that you like, you can right-click and save it as a workflow template, okay? So let's save it as something called maybe test for now, and I have saved it. Very nice. So I will now open that fed-fasted example and show you that the one that we created together can be reapplied to any other data set. I highlight the workflow. I go up here, load workflow template. This is one of the icons, or you can also right-click and select that. Let's select the test that I did. Okay. It comes in here. Notice it says the user needs to map the data. It's not mapped yet. There's no data here, so there's no table. I take the NCA, take the final parameters pivoted worksheet. It finds what it needs because it's set up to the default NCA. Click on the top, run the whole thing, and now you get a table. Okay? And then last thing I'm going to show you is, okay, so I have this table here that I've created. How do I get it out? How do I export it? There's two ways to do that. You can go to File, Word Export, and you can pick tables, for example. But in this case, let's just select one of the tables. All right, so we just have one table. So that's the only one that is going to export. I click Export, and that opens Word, and that table will be there. Now notice that this table is a Word table. If I click on it and I move it, I can, make these expanded or edited. So this might not be what you want. You may want it as an image. If that is the case, you can also add a reporter object. And I'm not going to be discussing reporter in detail. Maybe we'll have another webinar about this, but I'll show you some very basic things. In reporter, you can say you want a table by clicking here and then clicking on Add Content and selecting what that table is. So in this case, it's this result table. Say OK. All right. And then you have this option on the bottom to create tables as images. So if you click that and run this object, it will create a Word document. You cannot see it in Phoenix because it's Word, but you can click on View External Viewer, and it shows you this as an image. Okay? The nice thing about Reporter is that it's an object in your workflow. So if you change NCA and refresh this, it would be refreshed. All right, so I'm going to finish here my presentation. We have just a couple of minutes for Q&A. And if I don't get to all the questions that you may have, feel free to type them in, and we will send you a written document with the answers. Okay. So, Tom, do we have any questions?
Yes, there's one question about if it's possible to change the borders, and I think that, well, you go ahead and address that one. I think I know the answer, but you go ahead and say what it is.
If we can change the orders of
the border, can you change the border so that can you change the borders of the cells in the table? I think you can not do it in the table itself, but you could do it in the Word version once you've got it in Word.
Correct. So anything in the table, the way that it's programmed, it's going to stay like that. So there's no changes that you can do to the borders. The only way to do that is to export to Word and then edit them in Word. Again, you lose the link, so if there are any type of changes in MCA, that table would not be refreshed.
And then other people have asked if the template will be available. I believe we'll be distributing that along with the recording.
Yes, we will send these projects and the templates available to you. Remember that these templates I created with version 8.1, so they might not work in earlier versions. But everything that I showed you, the descriptive statistics, the data wizard, all of that can be done in any other version. So you can create your own template in any other version and save it.
And someone asked about what the vertical slash is in the concatenation.
Yes, that stands for or. So one argument or the other. So if the mean is 0 or the mean is equal to this expression, then you do something. So the slash is for or.
And someone else asked if the other previous webinars are available. I believe they can get to those from our website.
Yes, so when we send you the link to this webinar, is to a course in Certara University. We call it a course, but basically it just contains all the webinars that have been recorded, and we will add the future ones. And also it has tips and tricks, so you can look at a couple of videos that we have created on tips and tricks, and we continue to update those. So we may be adding more videos for tips. So please do sign up for that, and you will be on the know at all times. All right, so this brings us to the end of our session today. We will adjourn now, and thank you so much for attending. Be on the lookout for this recording, and if there's other questions, we will address them at that time. Thank you very much.